Hi guys, good afternoon. Welcome back again to Procurement with myself, Lerato. Today we have another yet special guest, our podcast episode 2. And this channel we're keeping it real. We're discussing all things procurement, supply chain, and of course having conversations that uphold the profession. And today I have a very special guest, Benneth Machaba. Benneth is the head of supply chain management. Wow, it's such a privilege to have you here with me today. How are you, sir?
Hi, Lerato. Thank you for having me. I'm good, and how are you?
I'm all right.
Super.
Sure. How's it been working at Nexa?
Look, it's a very challenging environment, which keeps one on their toes. So overall, it's good.
You are good.
Yeah, I've been. It's the longest that I've ever worked for in my career. So,
is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So one thing I admire about your profile, I must say, is that you have moved across different state-owned companies and
Correct.
Working within the government entity.
Correct.
So just to mention a few, you've worked for SARS, you've worked for City of Johannesburg. Can you just tell me a little bit about how you started your career and why you chose, supply chain? Plus, I guess that you also have experience with, end-to-end, BEE, sourcing, buying, etc.
Sure. Yeah. How I started my career in this field, it's quite amazing. Because I consider myself as somebody who came through the back door.
Okay.
I did not initially study procurement or supply chain.
That's interesting. Okay.
I studied agriculture, to be precise. And then towards my final year at varsity, there was a post that was advertised in one of the agricultural firms for in-service training, which I happened to apply for. And I was interviewed with other students, final year students, and then I got successful. I was hired, and when I got there, I was of the view that I'm going to do agriculture as well. But that's when I got introduced to the concept of procurement, to then say, you are going to do procurement. And it was quite amazing because I said, what is procurement? Because I didn't even know. I had no clue.
It's not self-explanatory for someone who's an ordinary.
No. Yes.
Person.
I bet even now, if you can go to matric students and ask,
don't know.
They know procurement. They don't know. And they're still final year students who have been to varsity for 4 years.
I can admit that.
They still don't know.
Because university doesn't elevate procurement.
Yes.
They speak more about supply chain.
Yes. So I got shocked. I mean, what is procurement? And they explained what is procurement to me. And then the next thing was, but how do I fit in as an agriculturalist into this process? And they said, the nature of the company, it produces fresh produce packaging, and foodstuff. So they thought it would be better to get somebody who's more into the industry to be a buyer, because they understand the dynamics of the agricultural firms.
Yeah.
And I said, let's give it a try, And I did that for 2 full years.
Yeah.
And after that 2 full years, I really had that interest sliding from agriculture into the procurement part, being elevated.
Okay.
And
that's how you joined the procurement
eventually,
space.
yes. So I ended, liking more the procurement side than the agricultural side. And I then had to switch industries just to try and see if I will survive in any industry without the agricultural side.
Because that was a place of comfort.
Yes, it was a place of comfort for some reason. And then I joined the aviation sector.
Really? So you traveled a lot?
No, not necessarily traveled, but just aviation buying.
Oh, okay.
And it became very exciting. And
that's nice there, because technical.
Yeah, it's very technical and exciting, and that's how I ended up
being where you are now,
loving the procurement side. And from there, I never looked back. In terms
amazing.
Of the other fields that I studied for. I just kept on moving from one procurement role to the other.
And I like your story because this is a proof that you don't have to follow a linear process. I studied this, and then the only thing I do is this. Along the way, you could find some other areas of interest. And for you, it was this area. Then you grew in the space. Because you have so much experience in the state-owned entity government, right? That sector, I would say, it's highly, governed, regulated. And this is the topic that I want us to dive deep into, right?
Okay.
the impact of excessive regulation surrounding public sector procurement. I mean, we have PFMA, triple PFMA, you have BEE codes, you have so many, you know that very well, right? And someone who's listening to this, they understand that we are compliant by the book.
Correct.
The book or not, otherwise you're in trouble. So now, with that in mind, can you tell me, in your experience of working within, the sector in this space, what would you say is the most important things one needs to look into while you work within the governance and the regulation, the benefits, the challenges, just from your experience?
Yeah, look, firstly, I think it's important to note that in public sector, you are spending the public purse and not a private purse. So as a result, there is a need for that regulations, the rules that are going to govern how things are done, so that there's overall accountability.
But why is there such a need? For someone who does not know nothing.
Yeah. So as opposed to private sector, in private sector you will have Lerato and associates,
yes,
who are running their own businesses and their operations. And as and when they need to do something, if there's an agreement that talk to company ABC and tell them to come and paint this room, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you guys as shareholders agreed to that, you move with that speed. While in the public sector, it's quite different in that you are spending the public purse. Everyone is a shareholder into that process.
Yeah. Is that why PFMA says you are accountable for
yes. Everyone is a shareholder. A general public, they are shareholders.
Yes.
Every company that's existing in Paintex, they are the shareholder into that process. And it's for that reason that the process needs to be governed, guided to make sure that it's not exploited to benefit minority, but to benefit everyone else. At the same time, taking into consideration the fairness of that process, the competitiveness of that process, and all those other elements of Section 217 of the Constitution. So that is the basis of that. That we need to be accountable at the end of the day. So it shouldn't be that company A can feel disadvantaged about the process that public entity used to procure. They were not afforded an opportunity, and maybe company B was preferenced over any other.
So it's
company
just
that's available.
About transparency, fairness,
all
making
those
sure
elements,
that
all those elements.
Okay, there is fairness in the process. So, but according to you, ever since you started your career in the space, do you believe that it is highly governed or regulated? Do you feel some of the things are unnecessary? Or, you know what, we need it as South Africa. We need it.
Look, there are those who, generally the public perceive it as a bureaucratic environment, and if you look into the theories of bureaucracy, you will then realize that bureaucracy depends on which side of the fence you're sitting. If you are sitting on the right side of the fence, it's not bureaucracy. If you are sitting on the wrong side of the fence, it's bureaucracy.
So how so? Explain for someone who doesn't understand what you're saying.
Remember, there are those elements that needs to be catered for. And in order for the public sector to make sure that we comply to those elements, they need to come up with steps in terms of how things are going to be done. And somebody who might be too lazy to go through those steps or meet some of the requirements that needs to be met will say the process is bureaucratic. But those who understand the environment that they are trading into and are willing to do whatever it takes to still survive and sustain in that environment, they'll do whatever it takes to arm themselves with the right compliance requirements. And they wouldn't see that as bureaucracy.
So it's about perception.
It's about perception. It's about perception, yes.
Do you find that is a challenge with the older or the younger generation in that space that you're working in government, that see it too the bureaucracy is a lot? Or
well, Everyone. I wouldn't say it's
not
divided into ages. Everyone will see it like that, depending on how interested are you into the field. You really need to develop a serious and deep interest into the field for you to understand why is it regulated like that, and you will then start realizing that actually this is necessary. You know? But if you don't have the right interest, because other people just take a helicopter view and want to make judgment based on what they had. There are people who don't even know what happens in the public procurement. They just heard somebody saying it's bureaucratic, it takes too long.
And they make it a Bible.
And then they make it a Bible. You just pass that knowledge from one person to the other. So they don't make time to do research and understand what really happens into the public sector.
But does the public sector then empower the supply chain professionals that are starting already in through different socialization of these new regulations that are consistently being upgraded, new ones coming in, and so that everyone is on the same book and you're moving with the same objective?
Look, the regulator will issue communication to everyone to make sure that whoever that's practitioner in the field have got access to information well ahead of time for them to arm themselves, and at times they go to the length of even providing training and clarification issues. But the issue of understanding, perception, implementation, it's all about us, the practitioners, as to whether the class that I attended last week about a particular regulation, did it make sense to me? And am I really am I willing to go through that into doing things, or I'm just going to proceed with how I used to do things and take shortcuts? So the buy-in from the practitioners is very critical, and the willingness for them to do that, it's what matters most.
Okay, thank you for that. So now, since you are someone who grew in the supply chain, sector and environment, you are now the head of supply chain, right?
Correct.
Looking at your journey and how you grew, right, there is some sense of perception that a lot of practitioners that are within the government, public sector procurement, working within this highly regulated environment, seem to have less interest, or maybe not interest. The growth journey is very small, right, compared to the private sector, where it's highly competitive. You want to get into the next job. What is the new degree? New courses. You're just consistently in this high performance mentality. And because it's that high performance mentality, you need to keep up and level up so that you show up as someone that once you are appointed at the right position, right? And yourself being in this sector, in an environment, do you think that the fact that there's this regulation that say this is how you must do things, there's less interest or growth for people that are in this space?
Look, it's yes and no. Public sector, in its own nature, has got some element of stability in terms of job security.
Job security is the key word.
Yeah, let's start there. And the reason for that being that the dynamics of the market that drives sustainability of both public and private sector are different. Private sector has got a lot of pressure to stay on their toes for their sustainability, while on the other side,
you don't have to
you
stay
can still
on
do
your toes.
bad for the next 10 years.
But why?
And you will still see government bailing out, and the resources that are there are very much secured. And as such, people take that and make it a comfort zone of some sort. For that transition for somebody to move from public to private, it's very difficult. People don't do it more often because of the way things are done. Here the consequence management, in many cases, it's very slow.
I actually like that point. I love that point.
It's not there.
Yeah.
While on the other side, the consequence management is there. It's either you do it or you don't.
Yeah.
Shape in or shape out.
That's true.
So we sit with a lot of problems in public sector as a result of this process and the culture of operations. If only we could adopt the culture of shape in or shape out, then the issue of development and growth will be more simpler. Because the two industries will be the same.
Yeah.
Just different rules governing it, but the culture will be the same.
For someone, well, I have worked both, private and public sector. For the most part of my life is in private sector, and I've had at least the taste of what it feels like to work for a state-owned company.
Okay.
And I absolutely agree with you that there is a different environment and a culture of success, of driving performance objectives. And because it's highly competitive in the private sector, you also always on your toes, right? But also the flexibility that comes with me knowing when I come in an environment, I can implement things and change and adapt into the world-class procurement standards, then it makes the company want to keep you. But perhaps that's probably one of the things that is very disheartening and discouraging in the public sector, where even if you want to do that, the regulation comes in and say, oh, sorry, did you consider, clause what of what, code what F20 mang. And then you are like, yo.
Yeah, look, generally the field on its own is clouded by not so good things. The likes of corruption and fraud.
Yes, there's that whole
so there's that cloud above us that's hovering. And that on its own takes away some of the flexibilities in the process. So, for instance, your principals might not have full trust and give you the whole check for you to start doing what needs to be done because they are very skeptical about some dynamics in the environment. So there's a lot of things that happens that really hampers how things are supposed to happen.
But it is upon the individual to decide.
It's upon the individual.
Because you've grown in this space.
Yeah, it's upon the individual. Look, it's all about you coming into the space. Because there are people who come into the space, literally get a framework that has been there for the past 10 years. And you come in and implement the very same framework. And you ride on it, and you ride on it.
Yeah.
And are you making any impact? The answer is not necessarily. The status quo remains.
But could it be that innovation and driving change and fresh ideas is not that preached or socialized that much that allows individuals to actually think it's allowed for me to do this? You get me?
I get you. Look, it's once again more into the willingness of the practitioner, and how you interpret these regulations that are guiding the process. Many practitioners decide to just take whatever that is in front of us and move the way it is with no alterations.
Could it be that also the people above them, they are not so open-minded? They're like, hey, this is the policy, PFMA says.
Yeah.
Act of what says, therefore don't come with your changes here. Isn't that a contributing factor?
Remember, in many instances, procurement reports to CFO, right? In many instances, in both public and private sector. And CFOs have got other things to worry about in terms of sustainability of the organization, growth of the company and so forth. But the PES is more important. But at the same time, they also want to make sure that the PES, the public PES, is utilized correctly. So the way of spending the public money is correctly. And without going too deep into the dynamics, the only way will be to then say, if the regulation says ABC, then you must do ABC, and that then becomes the guiding factor, while if I am as a practitioner, I'm able to see how things can be improved within the process. It's my responsibility to engage the CFO and EXCO to then say, colleagues, this is how we can leverage from the process. And I must sell the changes. I must sell the changes and defend them. And in that way, you are given the ability to develop the department and implement new things. So I will still blame it a lot on the willingness
of the
practitioners, because, as I said, many practitioners will look into the regulations, the framework, and just want to move in that direction without thinking that I can go.
Do you know what my mom used to say? That don't walk the path of life. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, what do we call them? I don't know what they're called. We just know the way they're
Yeah, I also know them.
Like a horse says, we're just looking that way. You can't. And I mean, I believe also the board executives, even in the public sector, are interested in seeing how we can enable the environment within the framework. I once did a video about public sector procurement performance and performance managing suppliers, that it does not mean just because of a regulation you can't performance manage a vendor. If a vendor is not performing, they're not delivering up to the standard, the practitioners need to develop some supply performance metrics, right?
Yes.
Because you ultimately are providing a service to, you know, your end users, and you want to make sure that the company succeeds. But if the vendor is not delivering on time, forever late, failed promises, what is stopping you to say, let us put you on a performance metrics that we require this, failure to do this, your contract, you can pay penalties, or that is not against the regulation.
Yeah. You see, again, we're talking about the skills and the capability of an individual who's then implementing party. The executive authority, the board, the CEO, the CFO, and the entire ExCo want what's the best for the organization.
Yes.
You know, and in many cases, they want to go through as little pain as possible in running the procurement process, right? So, as a practitioner, it then becomes your responsibility to craft the process
to make it
smooth and simpler, and you should be able to sell it to them and defend in comparison to the regulations that it is still within the regulations and it's in compliance with the regulations, and in that way they are going to support you. They are there to support us at the end of the day, but the will to do it must come from us. You know.
Got it.
Now, if you talk about issues of supply development and so forth, I mean, generally, people will run to the contract clauses every time there's poor performance issues on the supplier side, to then say, but the contract says if you can't perform, we give you notice, and if you fail, we terminate. You know, people, that's what they want to do.
That's a safe net.
That's what.
But that's not the only way that should.
And that's not the only way, because now you're not necessarily developing anyone.
Of course.
And creating.
You're more punitive.
Yeah, you're not creating an environment that becomes conducive for everyone, because you need these suppliers into the industry. You're not necessarily developing Lerato for my organization. I'm developing Lerato and Associates for everyone. Yeah. I'm creating a pool for everyone to be able to use, because the type of skills that you're going to learn from my organizations will assist you to solve problems in the next organizations.
So bringing it back to the regulation and the fact that procurement professionals in the public sector work within these high regulations, right? What would you say are some of the roadblocks or the challenges faced by professionals having to work around these high demanding state regulations? Do not do this. Work with this framework. Don't work with this framework. Evaluate BE like this. Even if you want to be creative, what are some of the roadblocks or challenges that you feel are out there for practitioners in your experience?
Yeah, look, firstly, I think when the regulations were crafted, I don't think there was, and that's my own opinion, there was a thorough consideration that procurement is not a unilateral activity, you know. So they are drafted in such a way, or crafted in such a way, that it takes it as if procurement is the
straight line.
Okay. You know, you are the alpha and omega of the process.
Yeah.
And as such, it is expected that once I know that the regulation says A up to Z, then I should be able to move and sail within the industry with no pain. But we are not a unilateral function. So there are other stakeholders that are connected to the process.
So then I'm tempted to ask you this, and I'm sure other people out there may want to know this, right?
Okay.
Why is it then that in this excessive regulations within the public sector's procurement, there seems to be other state organs that perform more efficiently than others by virtue of the perception, the reports, Transnet, SARS has been one of those, ESCOM, that have shown that they, are more on the efficient procurement type of cycles. And then you have other reports of other PRASAs and, Gibelas and others. They're just not in the same light, Department of whatever. You get me? There seems to be, some sense of different levels of efficiency, but there's the same regulation. In your opinion, what do you think causes that?
Look, the willingness and the characteristics of the implementing practitioner.
Okay.
It's what really differentiates from.
So the resources in that particular.
So it's the same dynamics as having a mathematical teacher in KZN who used the very same textbook.
All right. Thank you for that. I just want to throw in, something for you to think just on the spot. Ne? What do you believe is just the top 3 benefits about regulation in the benefits, basically regulations in the public sector procurement? What is the benefit of having this entire space regulated?
Firstly, it's accountability.
Okay.
You are able to account for it, and meaning that you can work your steps back.
Okay.
That the regulations, if you're saying that I've done it incorrectly, and I'm saying I've done it correctly, the regulation says this is how it's supposed to be done.
So it's
and I've done exactly that.
Okay.
So you can't then say that I've abused the process.
Okay.
That's the first thing. And secondly is the control.
Yeah.
The environment needs to be controlled. Remember, this is the transition of company funds or resources, which are funds. And if you happen to have, following the state capture, many damages happened as a result of procurement, and when you look into what went wrong, it's lack of control, there was very little regard to the regulations, and subsequently there's malpractices, corruption and fraud related activities, and that erodes the funds within the organization, and that talks to the sustainability of the organization. So the functions that you were supposed to be offering as an entity of government is now compromised because of lack of funds. That affects how the whole economy is operating and so forth. So the implication is much bigger than what we see in a single entity. And the
third one?
The third one I can put in the... you did really put me on spot. The third one I can maybe talk about the economy. Remember, public procurement, it's normally in each and every country considered to be the sole biggest procuring entity in a particular country. Because
of the spend.
Right? Now, that talks to controlling and driving the economy.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So if we can't control and have ways how these monies are going to be spent, we can't have an influence into growing the economy of the country. because
without it, that will be a mess.
Yes, that will be a mess.
Okay.
That will be a mess. And subsequently, the economy will just move from positive to negative. So that's what I can say for now.
Okay.
But it can be much bigger than that. I mean, procurement is one of those things that we can discuss the whole week and still carry on and so forth. But I think for now, those are the things that I can mention to that. Say, at the top of my head, I can talk about accountability, the control, and the impact into the economy. Many people take it very lightly, but the reality is that if you look into the financial muscles that the public procurement has, and the changes that need to happen into the economy, talk about empowerment of SMMEs, talk about sustainability of those companies. If public procurement doesn't do the right thing, it then messes up the whole chain. The value chain is disrupted, and subsequently the country will suffer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And why I ask you this question is because there are probably a lot more of professionals out there that still don't understand why must we follow PFMA, why must we have so many regulations, why there is this. But they're doing it, but some of them still don't understand why. So the impact is quite important for one to outline, and at the same time know what the benefit is. As much as we can talk about challenges, bottlenecks and problems, there's also the brighter side. And I like the fact that you're mentioning that.
Yeah, look, you come into every industry, find it as it is with its own dynamics. But do you have appetite of going deep and finding out when did actually procurement start? Why did it start?
But who has the time to read all of it? Someone who's interested.
No, if you are a role player,
if you're a role player, you've got to know.
You need to understand.
I know.
These things comes from the World War II.
Yes.
The origin.
Yes. And I enjoy the space, and that's what I do to empower and to grow knowledge, and to also understand that every industry, has its own importance.
Correct.
And value add. But you can only get to the deep only if you also go to the deep.
Correct.
Yeah. So if you really want to stand out and do more and see value, you have to read up, you have to know things, you need to check, like you're saying, where does this thing come from? Where is it going? Have an interest, So just getting towards the end of our conversation, what advice would you give someone who's just starting up in public sector procurement? Or starting next, someone who just does not know nothing and they just graduated and they're excited to start a job. What advice can you give that person?
I'll use a Latin phrase called caveat emptor.
Okay.
It's a Latin
very
phrase.
Technical for some people. So tell us, what does that mean?
It's a Latin phrase that is used in the procurement space, which simply means let the buyer be aware.
Okay.
So you've got an overall responsibility. Your actions, which you might consider to be just signing a document, or just sending an email, have got a bigger impact.
Of course. I actually enjoyed this conversation. I must say that I've learned quite a bit myself, especially navigating, this excessive regulation within the space of public sector procurement while remaining efficient. Because as a professional, you need to still show up as someone that is interested and add value. And does not mean because you have this too many rules and regulations and policies and procedures does not mean that you can be effective and efficient or even innovative, to enable the very same company within, the powers above to make it more transparent and efficient, of course.
Yeah, look, it's a very interesting space.
It is.
If it wasn't, I would have left long time ago.
Is it? And for some reason, people think that it lacks talent.
Yeah.
It lacks to attract talent.
No. It's because it keeps you on your toes. Man.
But you guys must show up more and teach people about this. And that's why I do what I do, because people think that procurement is a boring environment.
I know.
And ever since I started this channel, guess what the common word I hear? You've made procurement look fun. It adds some color. We didn't know there's so much that goes in there.
Yeah, it needs to be fashionable.
Exactly.
It needs to be fashionable.
But so do we attract the young ones to also join it?
As I said, that, we are responsible as practitioners to position it in the organization to the point where it's attractive and is seen as a core department and core function within the organization.
Thank you. Just one last word from you, which I usually ask everyone that comes onto the show. What is your motto? And then we'll be done. What drives you just as a person?
Well, I just started in my career. I think it was my first year. I saw a phrase that in a diary, I forgot by who, which said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Okay, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
The main thing, yeah. So,
wow, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I saw it on a diary
okay.
Many years ago, and I never forgot about it. So I then make it like
your main must be your main and become the main.
Let the main thing be the main thing, you know. So
is that also relevant in relationships? I just thought I could throw that on you.
Well, yeah. in anything that you do,
yeah.
so focus, keep focused.
Yeah.
Because once this is the main thing,
yeah,
and I keep it the main thing,
it becomes.
I invest all my effort in making sure that it becomes a success. But if I lose focus,
powerful.
Then
the main is no longer the main thing.
The main thing is no longer the main thing,
man,
and that becomes the.
This is amazing, yeah.
The problem for everyone. You know? Sure. So that's my motto. Keep the main thing, the main thing.
Thank you so much, Benneth Machaba.
Correct.
Jeez, how did I forget? It has been such an absolute honor to have you with me today, talking about the excessive regulation impacting efficiency in the procurement
it's a pleasure,
sector within the public space. It has been such a good conversation. I have learned quite a lot, and I believe that our viewers will learn. And guys, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let's spread the word.
Certainly. Look, as indicated, that the field is still needs to be marketed and be made fashionable, and we need to have more of these conversations so that we can make it fashionable, because we really need people who have got interest and appetite to work in the space. People who are going to come in and make differences. The right attitude, the can-do approach, the resilience and all those things. We need that. And in the absence of conversations like this one, it's hardly going to happen.
That's true.
Hardly going to happen.
Thank you.
So you are doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We are signing out. Thank you so much for tuning in.